Hi, I'm Diane Bada. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and in this video, I'm going to discuss 7 red flags of enmeshed families, the emotional and psychological impact of enmeshment, and some ways to break free from enmeshment if it's a dynamic that you recognize was present in your family of origin. Enmeshment occurs when family members' emotional connections are so interconnected that individual roles and boundaries become very blurred. These families typically display a high level of involvement in each other's lives, often to the point of being intrusive or very overbearing. In enmeshed families, parents may rely on their children for emotional support or to fulfill their unmet needs, that preventing the development of the child's own identity. This video, however, is not a substitute for psychotherapy. So if you find yourself identifying with some of these signs, you may want to consider meeting with a licensed mental health professional for professional treatment. Okay, to recognize enmeshment in your own family, there may be 3 major questions that you want to consider. Number 1, boundaries. So are personal boundaries respected and encouraged, or are they frequently violated? Number 2, decision-making. Is there room for individual choice and autonomy, or does the family typically prefer group decision-making and apply a lot of pressure if it seems as though somebody is stepping out of line, let's say? Number 3, over-involvement. Do family members often feel overwhelmed by the needs and emotions of others, or do they struggle to set their own goals or to pursue their own aspirations without the influence of the family unit? Those are 3 things that you can ask yourself, or maybe think about, reflect on, that may provide some clues as to whether or not enmeshment was or is present in your family. 7 major red flags, let's say, of an enmeshed family system. Number 1, so a lack of personal space or privacy. In enmeshed families, pretty much every aspect of life is subject to scrutiny. This can be everything from social interactions with friends or neighbors, personal habits, what TV shows a person prefers to watch, what music they might want to listen to. Pretty much everything can feel as though it is on display or subject to scrutiny by other family members. Number 2, emotional fusion. So family members may be so closely intertwined in an enmeshed family that the feelings of one directly influence the feelings of another person. So an example of this, let's say a person is feeling very sad or very upset about something. If enmeshment is present in a family, another family member may have a really hard time not staying focused on that. They may feel, that they then feel the same emotion. They may feel sad as a result, or have a hard time maybe focusing on work as long as they know that this other family member is feeling sad or upset. That would be an example of emotional fusion that you would see in an enmeshed family system. Number 3, role confusion. So in enmeshment, you typically see a blurring of traditional family roles. This can lead members to feel kind of unsure about what they're responsible for or what is expected of them. In an enmeshed family, this can look like a son, for instance, taking on some of the tasks that a husband or father or the head of household might take on. You can also see sometimes, a son or a child being placed in a role where they are providing comfort to a family member or providing comfort to their parent, which is really something that that parent's partner should be providing, that another adult should be providing. So typically there's a lot of crossing of boundaries when it comes to roles in an enmeshed family. And number 4, a lack of conflict resolution skills. So in healthy families, you usually see conflicts coming up, but they are resolved by discussions. In healthy families, there's open communication. People feel comfortable asserting themselves, asserting their needs, asserting their preferences. In enmeshed families, this is not the case. Conflict or disagreement can feel very, very threatening in an enmeshed family. As a result, being assertive about what you want or what you need, communicating openly is something that individuals typically shy away from if they are in an enmeshed family system. As a result of this, adults who come from enmeshed families can have a very hard time speaking up about what they want or what they would prefer, which can then relate to difficulty setting boundaries, which we'll get to a bit later on. Another red flag can be overprotection. Usually people are overprotective because they are well-intentioned, they don't mean any harm, but this can be experienced by individuals who grew up in an enmeshed family as very overwhelming, very suffocating. This can also ironically end up doing a disservice to children if you don't have an opportunity to really discern whether or not something is a good idea or whether or not hanging out with a particular person would be wise, or going to a particular place would be wise. You're going to have a hard time doing that as an adult. So as adults, children who are too protected can really struggle to understand, how to live independently or how to make even simple decisions about, what is safe or what is not safe once they do get older. Another red flag is emotional neglect. In enmeshed families, individuals, because they are so focused on the needs and wants of others, this can lead to individuals having a hard time even identifying what they need or want. As a result, you can see a lot of emotional neglect in individuals who grew up in enmeshed families because so many discussions were about the family or what is best for the family and not about maybe what particular individual would want or need. Lastly, another red flag is difficulty establishing and maintaining relationships outside the family, because there is so much emphasis on spending time with the family, doing what the family wants, thinking how the family should think in an enmeshed family. You can see individuals who come from these families really having some difficulty knowing how to interact with others socially outside of that family system. Common things for other people, like, setting boundaries in a friendship or not maybe going above and beyond to help somebody else out, can feel very foreign to an individual who grows up in an enmeshed family. As a result, they may have a hard time, holding on to certain friendships or not getting taken advantage of in certain friendships or relationships. Okay, the impact of enmeshment. As you could probably discern, if you grow up in an enmeshed family, there are typically a lot of long-term results. First among these is low self-esteem and difficulties with identity or sense of self, because individuals in these families spend so much time having their needs or preferences disregarded or not even acknowledged. It can lead to a poor self-image. It can lead to poor self-esteem because they also don't have too many opportunities to think about what they like, what they don't like, what they want, what they don't want. It can be hard for them to really have a strong sense of self or a strong sense of identity. So that is something that often you see these individuals lacking when they make it to adulthood. Another impact is anxiety and depression. Logically, that makes sense. If you grow up in an environment where you feel that you don't have privacy, where you feel that your needs and wants don't matter, that only the preferences of other people in your family matter, it's not surprising that you may experience some depression. Anxiety can also relate to feeling a bit out of place in other social settings, or maybe not understanding social rules, rules pertaining to boundaries or to conflict that other people seem to navigate with much more ease. There can be some significant social anxiety in individuals who grow up in these types of families. Another thing you may see is codependency emerging in relationships. If you grow up in an enmeshed family, you're pretty much primed to be in a caretaker role, right? You're so accustomed to maybe ignoring your own needs and wants, prioritizing the needs or preferences of a family member, maybe a father or mother, sibling. You may feel the most comfortable in situations or relationships that are very codependent. And of course, then this kind of leads to history repeating itself. These individuals may find that they can't speak up in dynamic where the other person is the sole focus of attention. They may feel that they can't set boundaries with somebody who is very ill or always needs their help, etc. And this leads me to the last one. So difficulty establishing boundaries. It makes sense, right? If you don't have the experience of setting boundaries related to time, to money, to personal space, to what you choose to share or not share, it can be very hard to then realize as an adult or with new people that you meet that is an option. Similarly, difficulty with conflict as an adult can be another major long-term impact. If you never had healthy conflict modeled, it's unlikely then that you are going to all of a sudden feel comfortable asserting yourself and asserting your needs and being okay in a situation where other people have had much more experience with that. Okay, so if you recognize that this may have been a part of what was going on in your family of origin, how do you get out of it? How do you break free? The first step towards extricating yourself from this dynamic or towards shifting it a little bit is to recognize what's happening, right? Being aware that this is what occurred in your childhood, or this is something that tends to come up in your family. That would be the first step in shifting it. Something else that you can do is to start getting more comfortable setting boundaries. So learning about boundaries, learning you have a right to limit your time with certain people, that you have a right to keep certain information private, that you have the right to not spend all of your money on a particular person. These are things that may feel very new, but can be very empowering to an individual who grew up in a family where this was the dynamic at play. Seeking therapy, that can be a great resource if you are struggling to break free from a dynamic of enmeshment. It can also help with brainstorming different approaches towards conflict resolution, brainstorming, which needs of yours may not be getting met, things that you would want to communicate more. Another thing that can be very helpful is seeking out opportunities for individual growth. So, hobbies, educational courses, identifying things that you are wanting to work towards, identifying things that you like and dislike. This may sound very simple, but it can be very powerful for an individual for whom this is something that was not really allowed when they were younger. There may have been something that you always wanted to pursue or do, but were not given permission to because it was not approved by the family growing up. So seeking those things out as an adult can be very impactful. Lastly, something that can be extremely helpful is gradually trying to extend your social circle, trying to extend your social network. This can be done through seeking out those hobbies or seeking out those activities for enrichment. It'll also give you an opportunity to practice your conflict resolution skills, to practice setting boundaries, to practice identifying your needs and wants. Sometimes it's easier to identify things that you have not been doing if you're surrounded by people who do them with more ease. So it can be very helpful also for modeling setting of boundaries, modeling healthy communication, which can make it that much more helpful in the process. Okay, in this video, I summarized some major red flags that enmeshment was present in your family of origin. I also summarized some of the long-term consequences of growing up in an enmeshed family. And I summarized some key things that can be very helpful if you're trying to break free from a dynamic of enmeshment in a family. Many times enmeshment leads to estrangement in families, which I will talk about in a future video, but it doesn't have to be the case. Many times if an individual works towards understanding how to set boundaries, understanding how to communicate conflict in a healthy way, relationships can be salvaged. Enmeshment tends to be a generational thing. So if you grew up in an enmeshed family, chances are your parents also grew up in an enmeshed family. And that is why it can be a very sticky thing, but it doesn't have to be something that is a permanent problem that cannot at all be, altered or shifted. Okay, I hope this video was helpful. I will be making more. Again, stay tuned and take care.